Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to Ukraine Crisis Media Center. We are very honored to welcome Mr. Siim Kallas, Vice President of the European Commissioner for Transport. Welcome for your opening statement.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am here today to accompany the first disbursement of EU macro-financial assistance, 100 million euro. So in addition for being responsible for transport, I am also responsible at this moment for economic and monetary affairs. I had a useful meeting earlier today with Deputy Prime Minister Groisman and representatives of regional and local authorities, and I'm looking forward to meeting later this afternoon with Prime Minister Yatsenyuk and Finance Minister Slapak. The key message I have come to convey today is that the European Union is fully committed to helping Ukraine to address its major economic challenges. In the short term, our efforts are focused on exceptional macro-financial assistance worth 1.6 billion euro in long-term low-interest loans. We will make a second, so today was first disbursement and second larger disbursement, 500 million soon, because I heard today that the Ukrainian Parliament has completed the ratification of the Memorandum of Understanding and the loan agreement. And provided the agreed reforms are implemented effectively and on schedule, we expect to be able to disperse the whole 1.6 billion euro during the course of this year. This macro-financial assistance is designed to help Ukraine cover part of its urgent external financial needs, reducing the economy's short-term balance of payments and fiscal vulnerabilities. Similar to the standby arrangement that was recently agreed with IMF, the macro-financial assistance aims to underpin the bold economic stabilization program recently launched by the Ukrainian administration. The objective is to improve transparency and governance practices. The successful implementation of the reforms supported by the European Union and IMF programs is essential for stabilizing Ukraine's economy in the short term and for creating a favorable business environment that can nurture sustainable and inclusive growth in the long term. In addition, in the very near future, Ukraine will receive a budget support grant from the European Union of 250 million euro through the state building contract, which as a whole is worth 355 million. The main objective of this assistance will be to promote good governance practices, more accountability and inclusive socio-economic development. All this is part of the broader multi-billion financial support package announced by the European Commission in March, which includes substantial additional support, up to 3 billion euro over 3 years, through the European Investment Bank. In the area of trade, the EU has already facilitated entry for Ukrainian exporters to the EU market by temporarily removing customs duties. This is extremely important and radical decision. And when it comes to energy, the EU is working with the Ukrainian authorities to ensure long-term diversification of supplies and to make sure that the Ukrainian gas transmission system continues to be an essential transit route for gas supplies to Europe. Before I take your questions, let me leave you with this thought. We all know that implementing economic reforms is always challenging, and even more so in a situation of political and social unrest. Yet, such reforms are essential to achieving a more prosperous and a fairer society. Many of the countries that joined the EU in the past decade demonstrate the potential of well-targeted, sound economic policies and structural reforms in times of political transitions. Ukraine's neighbors, Poland and Slovakia, as well as my own country, Estonia, which were among the first recipients of European Union financial support in the 90s, are currently among the fastest growing economies in the EU. With determined implementation of the agreed reforms, I am convinced that Ukraine can join the family of European nations that are able to offer their citizens a transparent and inclusive society accompanied by sustainable growth and job creation. The European Union is committed to support Ukraine as it embraces that challenge. Thank you very much.
Дуже дякую. Thank you for your presentation. Dear colleagues, are there any questions? Шановні колеги, чи є запитання?
Thank you, Commissioner. My name is Volodymyr Yermolenko, Internews Ukraine. 3 questions, very brief. First, about the macro-financial assistance. So we always hear the term, but can you precise to which purposes this 1.6 billion euros is going to be given, to be spent? Second question, today we received the first installment of this, as far as I understand, of this loan, but you said that the second one will be dispersed when Ukraine ratifies this memorandum, and so do you expect the second installment to be given soon? When exactly? And the third question, Commissioner Füle announced that the EU is ready to sign the economic parts, the remaining parts of the association agreement on 27th of June. Can you comment on that? And can we say that there is a political decision of the EU to sign the agreement on this date, and what is needed from the Ukrainian side to do that? Thank you.
Third question, thank you very much. If my colleague Füle said so it's a plan for European Council to really discuss Ukrainian issues and sign important documents. But more precisely, he has explained. Now, second installment of this macro-financial assistance is concerning that now it's ratified. In our schedule is somehow June, July. It will be available, and then, as I said, all this 1.6 billion. Is in the course of this year. Now about the macro-financial assistance and the program. You know, it's first of all, the conditions are quite precisely described in the memorandums of understanding. One memorandum was signed by Ukrainian government. The latest memorandum, which is now was ratified, was signed last week, 13th of May, and the first memorandum was already signed in December last year. And so there are the conditions. And what are the main? We don't design precisely or define precisely for which concrete budget lines the money will be used. But generally, the idea is to support Ukrainian government to cover the troubles which are coming with reforms. So you have to implement the big changes in your finances, and there will be definitely a gap, and this is to cover this gap. But of course there are quite serious conditions in this sense, how the money is used, that this will really bring results. So there are commitment for reforms, commitment for better governance, and you know the European countries, especially these countries who are the main donors of money, they are extremely vigilant about the use of money. So the memorandum of understanding describes also quite detailed way how it will be then reported and how it will be surveyed. But we don't tell for which purposes concretely to use. But as I mentioned also here, it is governance reforms and also to cover some social needs which are clearly linked to this transition transition for transition period and related to the reforms. Thank you.
Right, thank you. The next question will be in Russian.
Международный отдел Центральной Рады сотен Майдана. Как известно, Майдан сыграл большую роль в свержении коррупционного режима Януковича. И дальше собирается Майдан в этом направлении, свое слово еще говорить, по искоренению коррупции. Но в данный момент Майдан нуждается в помощи. Вот Еврокомиссия готова ли поддержать Майдан адресной помощью?
It depends, of course, what do you concretely want, and mostly, first of all, it's a question for Ukrainian government, and I don't think so that European Union as such has very so detailed assistance programs, but of course Europe is very attentive to different type of also these type of programs and assist via neighborhood policy instruments, and there are a lot of possibilities, but these are in various programs. Educative, we are promoting better knowledge of history and other things. But I think that this is probably not first to the European Commission, but first to the Ukrainian government to decide what to do. But of course, if people know will become accustomed to the European rules and procedures, then it's a question that what is a concrete project and what is a concrete idea. But I think that this is yet for Ukrainian government first.
Right, thank you. Any more questions?
Mr. Kallas, Michael Hammerschlag, Yahoo. What larger package is this part of? You know, there have been so many packages, it's hard to keep them all straight. Supposedly 15 billion totally from the EU, 18 billion from IMF, 1 or 2 billion from America. I don't know, when I add it all up, it's something like $36 billion. You know, is this completely standalone, or is this part of some larger package that was promised?
No, there are of course the biggest package is so far is decided with IMF, and European Union is part of this discussions and this package. But first of all, it's in general this is a package to we see what is the financial gap which appears after the certain energy restructuring, other reforms, and then the European Union and IMF both consider how to help Ukraine to overcome this. But you know, of course, this is overcome, and this is for transition period. Then it must be done, and the economy and also governance must start itself, and that's it's only the exceptional aid, which is very big, and we hope very much that it will be used in an extremely efficient way.
Thank you. Commissioner, can you elaborate on the state building thing, state building contract? What is meant exactly by that? So, to which purposes of state building this money will be provided? And second question to your specific field, to transport. I know that there is this European Investment Bank loan for construction of the tunnel between Ukraine and the EU, but we know that the transport, the network, the road networks is a big problem in Ukraine. And in the association agreement, there are certain, projects to develop Ukrainian transport networks within this, trans-European networks. Is the EU is considering any plans within European Investment Bank or some other facilities to give more loans to develop, especially the road transport network? Thank you.
It depends, starting from transport. I can be too long, of course, because yes, it is a big and attractive area. We use to finance Ukrainian, like also some other countries, projects based on external or neighborhood policy instruments, and there are various possibilities. Beski tunnel was memorandum of understanding, I understand, was signed yesterday, and this is, as you mentioned, it's EIB, there is EBRD, and of course it depends, everything depends on project, but you know, concerning the roads is in Europe our biggest ever investment project called Trans-European Networks and financing instrument Connecting Europe facility. Mostly are of course 2/3 are going to railways, and another big part to technology, air traffic management, and also rail traffic management. Fundamentally, we don't want to finance from TEN-T, but to finance roads is in the hands of member states, and it's mostly financed from regional funds, and in quite substantial amounts. So, but we don't have a pan-European strategy to finance roads. Yes, we have certain standards for roads, and this is in our hands. That we want to have safe roads, and we develop also smart roads concept and so on. And then it's depend. I think that again I said to transport minister as well that you should work out your concrete ideas, and then let's look what can we do and what instrument can be used, and exactly. But of course, roads are so big issue. So anyway, if you want to refurbish your roads, it takes time and money, and mostly the money from your own budget, or toll roads, or fees, whatever, vignette. About good governance, you know, I don't have concrete. I have also a list of actually, which is so EU-Ukraine reform agenda, and there are a lot of these type of projects described. But in general, in my own being and my experience, and also theoretical experience, starting from Alexander Hamilton, who created the United States government more than 200 years ago, it starts. I say it's first is legal environment, fair judiciary, tax collection, normal reporting, transparency, everything. These type of things are they need also substantial administrative efforts to all this environment function properly, that you as citizens, that enterprises, businesses feel that they are treated fairly, and there is a fair competition, and there is also, but mostly it all starts from legal environment. As I said, in my own country, it's numerous times I have been asked that what has been the most important reform, and I always, being instrumental in economic reforms, I always have said it is legal reform. Legal system must function properly, and lot of these type of laws, which are, I understand, in very in process in Ukraine as well. Public procurement rules, extremely controversial, complicated everywhere, but Europe has the most developed public procurement rules as a system in the world, I think. And at least all these type of things, but transparency, no obscure deals, fair treatment, tax collection, taxes, fair taxes, simple to manage taxes, and then you're able to manage. Taxes should be collected less than, but taxes can be lower but collected in vast majority. Tax evasion is one of the cancers which should be always, which is for economic climate, it is one thing which should be erased by all means. So it's a large issue, but in somehow simple, somehow complicated.
Richard Martin Hempel, freelance writer. I was just hoping to ask about how the EU hopes to determine whether steps are being made towards a better legal environment and an independent judiciary. Are there monitoring systems in place, and if so, could you describe?
We have, yes, it will be, don't worry, it will be monitored very closely. It is European Union will monitor via using missions. However you call these missions, but they are everywhere where European Union is having some kind of programs of assistance, and it is very serious. So in countries, in European Union countries themselves and outside, there is a serious surveillance. And we have, concerning Ukraine, we have a special Ukrainian task force, we have a support group, and there will be regular reports reported to the European Council, heads of states and governments, and of course to the all other necessary levels, how the program is implemented. And it's clearly that if programs of reforms are not implemented, then also money will not be dispersed. This has happened in many countries inside European Union as well. So as a general logic is that the surveillance is very tough.
Darina Krasnolska, Bloomberg News. Would you please comment whether you expect situation in Ukraine to stabilize after the elections, and whether, I don't know whether you met with the opinion polls leading candidate, but in general, do you have the impression that the authorities stay committed to reforms after the election? Thank you.
It's very difficult for me to comment the internal, the political life. I am here to accompany our financial aid and to discuss economic issues, what I do with great pleasure. But about, you know, this is also a big philosophical moment. Of course, governments are governments, always. Governments must fulfill their commitments. And we expect, and European Union expects also, of course, that if a government has signed something, some commitment, some memorandum of understanding, some contract, doesn't depend on elections. Next government will follow the same line. It is everywhere in democratic world, and it cannot be otherwise. So we are quite sure that we hope that elections will take place. Of course, very much ready to support and believe in these elections, that this will be fair and there will be really a new president, and all the leadership will follow the same line. If the line is not followed, then it's also clear that all this disbursement, with this disbursement picture will be more complicated.
Viola Bauer from the Austrian Press Agency. I hear from a lot of experts and people here that they are really disappointed from the EU and EU politics, that the sanctions are not strong enough, that since 2004 there's no really strong Ukrainian politics of the EU. So what to do about it to really offer a strong European perspective, and that they are not disappointed and turn away because it's not a turning point? Thank you.
You know, it's concerning European Union, it's quite often that whatever is discussed, then immediately you see a lot of comments everywhere that, oh, this European Union has not been able to decide and these and other things. But if you look back, now I've been there in 10 years, then it's amazing how many things have been decided in a very decisive and very, very comprehensive manner. It's the same macro-financial assistance. You know how critical are the discussions about money inside the European Union. And this was decided very, very rapidly. So it means that, but you cannot expect that the European, you must realize that this is 28 member states. 28 with different views, different culture, different structure, and they can agree. And my personal experience, I can say that no, I can bring a lot of examples. And with this Ukrainian, all negotiations went very seriously up to end of last year. And you know, there are of course limits when what member states can decide, but in my own area, for instance, aviation agreement, we think that we were very, very cooperative and did what was possible. But there are certain laws, there are rules, there are certain decision-making mechanisms, and I think that Europe was whatever you. If people say that the European Union didn't do anything and did few, then you ask simply, what exactly do you think? What? And then if you start to think, what about more money? From where? What is the mechanism? Or what about the some political decision? You know how it's a mechanism of decision making. It's not so so complicated, but it's not so easy. But I think, and personally, I'm convinced that European Union has been quite positive about Ukraine. Very much always has depended on the Ukrainian government to how to say, to fulfill these commitments, or to make commitments towards Europe. Europe has certain rules, and it is a voluntary union of 28 member states, and they voluntarily take decisions.
All right. Any more?
Yeah, you mentioned this common aviation area, and my question leads to this. In your forecast, when theoretically we can expect a common aviation area between EU and Ukraine? Common aviation area.
Common aviation,
yeah,
okay.
open, common sky, open sky. And we know there was certain reluctance from the previous Ukrainian authorities, or previous, oligarchs, to have this common aviation area. Do you see the principal change in the current Ukrainian authorities regarding these talks? Thank you.
No, but the aviation agreement is done. So it was initiated last December. So in this sense, we have agreement with Ukraine. We have agreement with Ukraine. Now we expect that on 5th of June, Transport Council will adopt. It's not yet clear will this be in the agenda, and it's not the problem between EU and Ukraine, but it's a problem how to reflect the tensions around Gibraltar in this agreement. So this is that Europe is a complicated organization, but in terms of agreement itself, I think that we have found solutions, and this was not an easy process, I must say, because I was somehow also involved in this process last year. But it has initiated, so it's ready. Now it's question of ratification, and ratification is first step is expected on 5th of June, if everything goes well.
All right, thank you. That was the last, right? So we would like to thank for coming over, and we're always welcome to having you back at Ukraine Crisis Media Center. Thank you so much for your speech.